Hey guys, it's Matthew again, your friendly neighborhood DM. Here to actually just give you another rule that you probably haven't heard before. We talked the other day about proficiency dice. Now we're going to talk about system shock and lingering injuries. So system shock, it's in the DMG as well as lingering injuries under massive damage. So this is an optional rule. So again, you don't have to use this rule. I like this rule for players who are above 5th level. Because at that point you've had some experience, you really know, you kind of know what you're doing and how to play. This optional rule makes it easier for creatures to be felled by massive damage. So this goes both ways in that it works on monsters as well. When a creature takes damage from a single source equal to greater than half of its hit point maximum, it must succeed on a DC 15 Constitution saving throw or suffer a random effect determined by a roll on the system shock table. For example, a creature that has a hit point maximum of 30 must make that Constitution save if it takes 15 or more damage from a single source. So it uses a D10 for this, and I don't use all of these. Obviously, you can pick and choose which ones you use and change them as you wish. The first two are actually the ones. The second one is actually the one I don't use. So if you roll a D1, if you roll a 1 on your D10, rather, the creature drops to 0 hit points. So in the case of monsters, it just goes ahead and dies. That I still use because it's only a D1. It's only a 1 in 10 chance. And especially if you're in a position where you can already cause more than 50% damage to particularly a monster, go ahead and let the combat end a little early. There's no reason to draw it out longer than it has to. So that's fine. So for a D10 on a 2 or 3, it says a creature drops to 0 hit points but is stable. I would consider actually changing this out for a D1. Because then if you wished, you can... It gives some role-playing options for your characters, and that, you know, they're stable. The monster's stable. So they could be healed and interrogated if that's something your players are looking to do. So that's an option. I don't use that one, or I switch it out for the one on the D10. Instead, I have them frightened. I give them the frightened condition. 4 to 5, a creature is stunned until the end of the next turn. 6 or 7, the creature can't take reactions and has disadvantage on attack rolls and ability checks until the end of its next turn. 8 to 10, the creature can't take reactions until the end of its next turn. So this, I'm a big fan of, well, if it's good for the monsters, it's good for the players, and vice versa. So this also applies to players. Though I'm more likely with players to, instead of a creature drops to 0 hit points, to have it a creature drops to 0 hit points but is stable. Meaning, the way I take that to mean, as far as for players, the but is stable is I say they've already had 2 successes on their death saving throw, meaning they only have to make 1 more death saving throw and they're back up with 1 hit point. You can change this as you like. I change, sometimes I'll change it as needs be in the situation. But I generally use this table, only changing out those first 2 selections depending on the situation. If my players are just at level 5, I might not use those, those first two options at all, and I'll trade them out for different conditions. Like I said, the frightened condition, it already has stunned in there, but maybe paralyzed, something like that. The second part of this, I'll just go to my other tab here, is called lingering injuries. So this is kind of the same thing. And I don't use all the options for it, but I'll just read through it real quick. Damage normally leaves no lingering effects. This option introduces the potential for long-term injuries. It is up to you to decide when to check for lingering. When to do a check for lingering injuries. A creature might sustain a lingering injury under the following circumstances. Keyword in there was might, so it's at DM's discretion what he or she uses. It says when it takes a critical hit. I don't use that. When it drops to 0 hit points but isn't killed outright, right? I do that. When it fails a death saving throw by 5 or more. I haven't done that, but I might consider it. That might be something I try with this next campaign. But again, like the other table, I only use this with players who are level 5 or higher. So it gives a D20 and it gives multiple different options, and maybe we just talked about massive damage and the system shock. Maybe you instead of some of those options on system shock, you use some of these. That's also an option. So real quick, just to go over some of these, we've got losing an eye, loss of an arm or a hand, loss of a foot or a leg, limp, internal injuries, broken ribs, horrible scar, festering wounds, and minor scar. It goes through what that actually causes mechanically, and also how you can regenerate it or cure it. These are fun because I always thought it kind of silly that, okay, cool, you almost died, but you're fine. Okay, cool, that, hobgoblin just ran you through the gut with a sword, but you're fine. So this just tries to make things a little bit more realistic. The hobgoblin runs you through, you're, able to be healed through magic, but you have this gnarly scar that you kind of hide from everyone. That can be, that makes things a little more realistic. So yeah, tell me what you think, guys. Tell me if it's something you have used, would like to use, and tell me how it goes. Again, though, good luck, adventurers, and have